How are you? Hope you're fine. This is the Shy Yeti Show.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Good luck, studio.
Oh, it's the Shy Life Podcast.
Oh, there's going to be some drama ahead.
All I wanted was a pie, and then I hatched out of an egg.
Okay, bring the mic over. He's ready to record.
I see your mental condition is improving.
Is it metaphorical? Is it deep? Is it deep?
Boy, he's not all that shy, is right.
Blimey, Governor, it's the Shy Life Podcast.
Hello, Paul.
654. Bonjour et bienvenue au podcast The Shy Life.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Shy Life Podcast with me, Paul the Shy Yeti. How are you doing? I'm all right. Martin's back with us. Hi, Martin. Martin Holmes, I should say, not sniffing.
Hello.
How are you? You're not sniffing, are you? Are you sniffing?
Oh, dismal. I'm having a dismal week, but we'll not dwell.
We're going to do some more chatter about. I guess we're sort of mid to late. We're sort of what's that bit? What do you call it when it's between 75 and when you're like 76, 77? What's that bit?
Oh, it's not the early 70s and it's not the late 70s. It's the mid-70s.
It's the late mid-70s.
The late mid-70s. Late middle age. Yes. As gets said a lot to me these days, yes. You're in late middle age, Mr. Holmes. It's these sorts of things tend to happen when you get to that sort of age.
I'm not totally sure, listeners, what we'll be talking about, but that's what happens in these episodes. So let's just run the theme music. When we come back, we'll see where we are. Okay, run that theme music.
Darling, it's the Shy Life Podcast.
Yes, but it's a positive thing, Paul. The High Life, the Shy Life.
You won't find a cast of characters like this everywhere.
I'll go anywhere for potato.
Delicious.
Hello, Captain. How are you?
You quite like a big bang, don't you?
Go Shy Yeti.
Oh, I hope he hasn't found out my secret. Do you think he has?
I love the Yeti test. It's my favorite thing.
If you thought that was bad, just listen to this.
Yeah, I'm strangely drawn to Yeti Uncle John's ankles as well.
I could eat more body weight in crisps every day.
Has anyone seen my hot sausage?
It's all gooey and meaty and yum, 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 yum.
Oh, I can't wait for it to begin.
It's the Shy Life Podcast.
I like that, yeah.
Look, mommy, I'm famous.
Marvellous, Paul. Hi there.
So, listeners, I suppose I should confess a truth that, as you remember, Martin and I, we talked about the 1950s, and most of those episodes, I think all those episodes went out last year, and then we recorded the first two episodes of talking about the mid-70s because I felt that there was stuff that Martin and I hadn't covered that Nick and I also maybe hadn't covered, or we covered it in a different way. So we did those two episodes.
And it was so unpopular, we thought we'll never do that again.
Well, the thing is, because so much happened with plot lines towards the end of the year, I thought actually it'd be nicer to wait until the start of 2023 to start a new season or a new series. I know our seasons are perhaps only 4 episodes, as they were with the 50s episodes. But all I'm saying is that I've edited and released the first episode of the 70s chat, and that's out there. But I haven't released the second episode, and this is the third episode. What I'm saying is that it's probably been 6 months since we recorded the second episode, and I have no idea what we talked about. So if we repeat ourselves,
back then I was so much younger and had all my own teeth. Damn it!
All I know is that this Wikipedia, I have so many tabs open that I feel like, I'm a hoarder as it is. I'm a hoarder of tabs on my laptop as well. I must have about 100 tabs open.
I feel like
of things I'm kind of
not that sort of tab.
No. I literally have the the Wikipedia page we were using as a reference last time, and we made it to...
We made it through the rain and found ourselves connected to the other folk who got rained on too and made it through.
That's right. We were in 1976. We'd escaped 1975, but I'm just looking down here and thinking, I'll try and focus on bands that I don't think we've talked about, and if we have, we just better use different words. We all just hope the listeners have forgotten.
You suddenly say, "Oh, I said all this before." I'm getting to that age where I keep telling you the same old stories that I told you last week, and we all pretend we've not heard them before.
First, I'll tell you the best-selling albums of 1976, and we might decide to talk about some of these people, but some of them we may have already talked about. So, as we're kind of taking a sort of band approach, we don't we're not sticking to these years. We're talking about their careers and stuff. So we may have covered it. So the top selling album of 1976 was the greatest hits of ABBA.
Really, already?
Well, this is the thing, because I think
they must have had about 3 at that point.
Well, I think the thing is that they had an album before Waterloo. And they also had one or two songs. I think perhaps those.
But you've got an ABBA greatest hits tape you've been showing on Tinternet.
Oh yes, but that's
is that from
no,
then?
That's a later one. That's
right. Okay.
The great. They did an album in 1982 called The First 10 Years, and then immediately never did another album until recently.
So it's not gold and more gold.
But they did greatest hits, and they did the second greatest hits. But the first greatest hits really does cover perhaps the singles that were hits in the UK, the singles that weren't hits in the UK, plus a few album tracks. I guess perhaps it took a while for their albums to sell as well as their singles. So people, so the thinking might have been, we'll put a few of the catchy album tracks that people maybe don't know yet, and they weren't necessarily all singles. But I do remember that being one of the first things that I was exposed to when I started getting into ABBA. But surprisingly, I mean, they must have had a hit or hits or something. I don't know what triggered this. It seems a while after their peak, but the 20 Golden Greats of the Beach Boys was the second.
Okay. Well, that's sort of. I don't get me wrong, but ABBA only really being in the public consciousness for 2 years. That's an awful lot to fill a greatest hits. But the Beach Boys by then have been around a while.
But I always wonder when a greatest hits comes out. What was there also?
Why have you not heard?
Was there a hit? Was there a? Well, that can happen because they change record labels, and the new record label wants to do a greatest hits of the songs that have been released under their.
That nobody bought.
Yeah.
How can that be a greatest hit?
But it might be that this is 20 Golden Greats, so that you presume that means it's the it is the
stuff of legend.
But I don't. Yeah, because I'm having a look, and that album covers stuff from about 63 to 69. So there was it wasn't necessarily. Maybe it was one of the first times that a really good sort of compilation had been available, but I don't think it was triggered by the fact that they had another. We were talking before in the first episode about Elvis, that he did have one or two songs that were doing quite well before the tragedy struck, whereas I'm not sure. I know the Beach Boys did have one or two songs after their heyday that were hits, but it was more few and far between. I
think that we've discovered, haven't we, over the years now, that actually sometimes you see a track listed on one of these albums and the title means nothing, and yet you know the song. So sometimes when you look at a greatest hits collection, you think, what the heck is that? And then you think, oh, it's that one, So maybe, maybe that's part and parcel of the greatest hits thing. It doesn't tell you what things are called. I mean, there are very few bands that have quite obscure track title. I mean, I was thinking something like the Kinks and something like that, but sometimes you think, oh, that's what that song is. Oh, it's track number 9, but it's known as track number 9, but it's this little melody line that people know as Fluffy Bunnies Go pop or whatever. It is kind of weird like that sometimes.
Let's have a look at the Beach Boys files right here. What were they doing in '76, if anything? They had an album in '73 called Holland, and they seem to have done an album in '77, which apparently is the nearest they got to a punk or synth pop album.
Right.
So it sounds interesting. They did 15. They must have done. They did 15 big ones, but I imagine that's.
Well, there's an admission.
I don't know whether that sounds like another great. That sounds like a greatest hit.
It does,
but actually,
or a reason to call Dino Rod.
Yeah. I think actually it's a covers album. That's probably so. They're not. They're 15 big ones, but they're not necessarily their own.
No.
They've nicked somebody else's big ones.
Okay, get your own big one, mate. Get your own.
Yeah. Let's see. Singles wise. Oh no. Where's the singles here? Studio albums. Yes. I want singles in the 70s. Here we go. They hadn't had a hit in the UK since 1970 by the time by 76. Their song Cotton Fields got to number 5.
Yeah.
They'd had a number 37 hit, although I think in 1973, I always think of Top of the Pops as being the top 40, but I think for a long time on Top of the Pops they were only interested in the top 30. I don't know when they started being a bit more, they added those extra 10, but in 1976 they had a single called Rock and Roll Music, which got to number 36. I don't know if that's right. I don't know if that's the little rock and roll music. Who did the original of that? Chuck Berry. Yes, it was. It was a cover. It was a cover of the Chuck Berry song.
Wow, that's still strange doing covers at that stage. That's interesting.
They got to number 5 with it in America, but until 1979, Lady Linda. They had that song Kokomo in 1988, which I think was in a film.
But it's interesting because they were still big enough to play Live Aid in '85, the Beach Boys. And I think it's also, I mean, again, I can't remember at what point McCartney was calling Pet Sounds an influence, or referring to it as an influential album. So they were still an influential band. But quite a few of their tracks turned up, didn't they, in Good Morning Vietnam as well? They started turning up as the sort of soundtrack tracks that in those albums that were kind of what's the term I'm looking for? But the soundtrack that was like a jukebox soundtrack in some ways.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It looks like Kokomo is from Cocktail. That's the Tom Cruise movie. It got to number 1 in America. It only made 25 in the UK, but I still remember that being quite sort of. Yeah. I think it's still. You still hear it when you hear if you heard like a montage of Beach Boys hits, because it's a later one, it does tend to get remembered. I mean, whereas I don't remember Lady Linda, even though that did a lot better. No, I don't remember that one as much. So there was a bit of a reason for them to perhaps release greatest hits the same time in '76. But at the same time they were doing a covers album. But let's go back and see. So that was the second biggest selling album. I feel like we've talked a little bit about this one before. The third biggest selling album was Forever and Ever by Demis Roussos.
Demi, I think my mum liked Demi. I don't know. It's an odd one, right? Because he liked his caftans, didn't he? It was that. It's interesting when you start to analyse certain bits of telly. That sort of late 70s European holiday vibe. It started to not infect, but it started to come into the music that people were buying, if you see what I mean. There was this sort of far away shores and sunsets and warm summer's days. There was a genuine air of that, and I think Demis Roussos sort of came in on that wave, as it were. All my analogies were all over the place in that description. And I think I started off going one way and it came another way, but I know what I meant. Because, funnily enough, the Beach Boys were coming in on waves as well, weren't they?
Yeah. I'm trying to see when his... I thought his big song was... What was his big song?
Forever and ever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
Forever and ever and ever and ever and ever.
I'm just trying to see if I'm looking at the right thing. Is this albums or singles? No.
But of course, Demis Roussos is in Abigail's Party, the TV version. It's a classic line. So he obviously he made his not inconsiderable impact on social history.
Yeah, I can see he had a number 5 hit in 1975. Happy to be on an island in the sun.
Yes.
I wonder if Forever and Ever is called something else, because I can see When Forever Has Gone, number 2. I was expecting to see I would expect to see Forever and Ever, but maybe it's not quite called that. But I'll come back to that. I'll solve that mystery later. I mean, those are his main 2.
There now follows an insert where Paul tells you what he was talking about.
Woe betide me if I do and I come back and I say, I've spent 20 quid on 5-disc best of Demis Roussos. I should probably...
These conversations cost
we should probably mention this to the listeners, because I want them to know that, I'm committed to doing these music, and it's not the first time, but... when I was
but should you support him on Patreon?
Yeah, I need to be supported.
You might pay for some
my research. It's costing me money, this show. Well, it costs to do this show anyway, because you have to get a host and stuff. But it costs because I go off down. I'm like, thank goodness,
rabbit holes.
Well, thank goodness I have Prime on music. So if I really want to download something, I can usually musically. I'm not too bad. It was actually. So I did spend a good half an hour listening to songs by Kenny, which we covered in episode 1 of the.
Right.
But luckily I didn't spend any money because I had access to them. But I did spend about 8 quid on buying Stardust by David Essex, because we talked about David Essex.
Oh, right.
And I was kind of like, well, there isn't any other way of doing it, and I'm quite interested because it's going to be 70s. There's a lot of people in Stardust. There's Adam Faith and there's all sorts of faces I was recognising. The drummer from The Who, I forgot his name. But yeah, lots of interesting people. So I might try and watch that later. But yeah, it costs me, so we have to be very careful what we talk about. If it's too interesting, there's potential that I'm going to end up going and buying something. But I'm still not sure. I still need to solve this mystery of why the song Among Us. I don't know. Why is it not called what I think it's called? Maybe it's an alternate dimension, Demis Roussos.
Stranger and stranger.
Let me have a look. Why can't I find it? It must, unless it was. Does he sing? Does he sing the whole thing in English? Is it not called?
I suppose that could be. Yes, it could be that the original is in Greek.
Forever, yeah. It says his best of thing is called. I wonder if it's called something else, or it's in. Let me have a look. Let's see. Forever and Ever is the album is called Forever and Ever as well. So I've got it here. Forever and Ever. Just why is it not in the list? It was. That's weird. It doesn't even say the UK chart position. Oh dear. Wikipedia is the trouble. Oh, it says it. It says it reached. It says it later appeared. Apparently, it was originally on. Oh, I see. Sorry, we get there eventually, listeners. There is a bit of a mystery to this. For some reason, the song was included on Roussos' 1973 album, Forever and Ever. No wonder I'm not seeing it in 76, because it looks like it was later on his 1976 EP, The Roussos Phenomenon. That's when it reached number 1. So that might explain it, because I'm looking a few years too late if I'm looking in 1976.
Right.
But But yes, the mystery of
the mystery of Demis.
He does have a lot about.
Paul Chandler investigates mystery. Yeti on the prowl. Dun, dun, dun.
All of this could be lies, except some of it I remember as being true. But the stuff I don't remember, it could all be lies. But so the fourth biggest selling album, and I don't think we've discussed him before, was A Night on the Town by Rod Stewart.
Not a huge Rod Stewart fan. I worked with some people who were massive fans of Rod Stewart, and for some reason, his music never appealed to me at all. I don't know whether it was him, or his personality, or the news stories surrounding him, everything like that. But for some reason, the whole Rod Stewart phenomenon kind of passed me by. Although I get the impression that he was, a fun person. He seemed to get on very well with Kenny Everett. He was obviously not someone that one should ignore, but I don't know, it just never, its music never really, I never took to it. Really.
I'm kind of a little bit the same. I did buy a greatest hits, and there were a few times where there was a few songs I didn't know of his, like the Killing of Georgie. Is it Georgie? Which I thought was sort of quite ahead of its time. In some elements.
He certainly embraced the androgynous look at a time when it wasn't as widespread as it later became.
Yeah.
There's some very sort of interesting videos that turn up of Rod Stewart performances that are considering his very sort of his very high testosterone lifestyle.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite. The two don't quite sort of align, but I don't know. I say just one of those. His music didn't grab me.
We won't look at his whole career because he's one that's had a very, very long career. The funny thing is, I was editing something today, and I've been going through tapes that Nick has digitised, and I thought, I've got to use this material. I can't just drop it in occasionally. I need to probably do an episode a month or episode every 6 weeks, and I take some interesting bits and I make it. And it's fun. It's as fun. I hope it's fun for the listeners, but it gives me a reason to be sitting there listening to it all. And I was listening to a tape that my brother sent me in about 1992, and I was quite surprised because he said, "I'm going to put on." I think around that time. Talking about covers, I think Rod Stewart did a cover versions album, and he had I think he had a hit. Let's have a look. I think he had. Let's have a look here. He did a version of Waltzing Matilda.
Right.
And
is that very slow?
Yes,
one?
I think so. Here we go. It's called Tom Trowbert's Blues, but it's basically Waltzing Matilda. Right. It got to number 6 in late '92, and I don't think I would have liked that, and I was kind of listening and hearing the tape now. I'm thinking, my 10-year-old brother like that in and I'm kind of thinking, that's a bit square, Graham. You're a bit square when you were 10. Yeah. But
does your brother have exotic taste in music?
I'm not sure what I know.
Not non-mainstream.
I know. We went through a stage around Britpop a couple of years later where we both liked the same music, but I'm not sure that unless it was the influence of Neighbours, because he mentions the childhood tradition of watching Neighbours. He mentions
it's alive. It's alive.
We brought it back. We caused Neighbours to. Well, this is how long ago the early episodes of our 70s chat occurred, in that I hadn't even seen the last episode when we recorded episode 1, but due to the harsh, media,
wibbly wobbly timey wimey nature of this recording,
we really did, we got the big guns out, and they had to reverse their decisions.
You send the boys round, didn't you, Paul? You send the boys.
I think
round.
It was at least I have Ick on my side, but I think it was that Vision on Sound episode we did about Neighbours and the end of TV shows that basically was the turnaround. So
it turned the super tanker. Yes.
But, yet to see in these new episodes. But by the time this is edited, who knows? They might even be behind the cameras. It's the power of podcasting. So I was. Oh my goodness! Is this really what's this? Because of course Rod is obviously known for being in the Faces, which I don't know a lot of. I mean, I know some of the famous ones, but I've never had like a Faces compilation. I've had small Faces albums, but not Faces albums. But they've got one here that I didn't realise this was the full. I've heard about You Can Make Me Dance, Sing or Anything, but the full title is You Can Make Me Dance, Sing or Anything, Even Take the Dog for a Walk, Mend a Fuse, Fold Away the Ironing Board, or any other domestic shortcomings.
Well, it's a Scottish life in there.
So, of course, before, I mean, we're talking about 776, but just before that, he had number one with Sailing, and he had which is sort of, well, easy listening heaven, I suppose, if you like. Very popular amongst the Radio 2 crowd, I imagine. Not the current Radio 2 crowd, but because Radio 2 isn't what it was. But at some point, it was
this very week. Tragedies.
And then we got This Old Heart of Mine, number 4. So he was having quite a lot of hits around this time. But Tonight's the Night, number 5, The Killing of Georgie, part 1 and 2, number 2. Those are more 75 into 76. He appears to have done a cover of Get Back in 76 that they got to number 11, and a 1976 re-release of Maggie May only got to 31. But then in 76, then in 77 he has I Don't Want to Talk About It, and The First Cut is the Deepest. They got to number 1. You're in My Heart, number 3. And then he was having quite. This is even before Do You Think I'm Sexy, which was another number 1 in 78. He was having a lot of top 10 hits around. I think he was probably more successful in 77 and 78 than he'd been in 76. But
The First Cut is a cover, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. I don't think he. I know his version, but I really like it's P.P. Arnold from 1967. But I have a Sheryl Crow version I really like.
Okay.
But I do tend to towards female vocals if I have a preference, not completely. I tend to like very harmonious. I like harmonious male groups or female are my go-to with male groups. Things like things like the Beach Boys or Bread or Beatles or Teenage Fan Club and things like that. But rather than single males, I single females. Yes, and female groups, yes. But then we have number 5, the biggest selling album is Glenn Campbell's 20 Golden Greats. Now, again, I'm not sure what triggered.
Glenn Campbell? My dad liked Glenn Campbell. Rhinestone Cowboy. I mean, it's but it's. I know he was in True Grit, but that was earlier than that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, what triggered the greatest hits to come out on this particular year? But let's have a look. Let's go to discography. I mean, of course, a lot of these albums tend to do well at the end of the year as well, or they come out in time for Christmas periods.
Christmas, yes.
It's never really changed. I mean, he seems to have released loads of albums, so he was presumably still. I'm just trying to find it. So here we go. Singles. Was he releasing any singles in 76? He did have some singles in 76 that were certainly US country hits, not necessarily chart hits. He had Don't Pull Your Love, number number 4 in the US country chart, and the single before that, Country Boy, You Got Your Feet in LA, got to number 3. And actually, according to this, Rhinestone Cowboy, I don't know why, but I feel like Rhinestone Cowboy is older than it is. Rhinestone Cowboy is only from 75, so
right.
And that was a proper chart hit. That was a number 4 over here. I think I just feel.
I've possibly told you this story before, but I was in when I was a student in South Wales. There was a pub crawl we used to do because there was basically a very small village with a lot of pubs in it back in the day, and we used to sort of hop from pub to pub. And I remember at closing time going in and doing. Putting Rhinestone Cowboy on all the jukeboxes in all the pubs in the village, and it was glorious. It was Wales, but you could actually hear them all singing it in the various pubs down the road. It's just one of those, and it was always Rhinestone Cowboy was selected. Lovely. I don't know. That's one of those weird memories, and I'm probably remembering it totally wrong. It probably never happened, but I remember it vividly. I mean, maybe we were the people who put the things on the jukebox and left the pub, and everyone hated us.
I think because I knew like Wichita Lineman and Galveston, they were both 68, Wichita Lineman was 68, and Galveston was 69, and they were kind of hits to sort of over.
I do feel I might be doing his memory a disservice, but my dad was a big fan of country and western.
Oh, my dad was quite a big fan. He did have quite a few top 10 hits in the UK, but I think if I was asked when Rhinestone Cowboy came from, I think I was thinking all the hits came from the late 60s, so I didn't realise.
It's interesting again, that sound, because that would have been the era when David Soul had his LPs out. Which my mother was a big fan of, but they were very much influenced by that sort of music as well.
So Wichita Lineman got to number 7, Galveston got to 14, How Do You Come Back number 4, All I Have to Do Is Dream, Bobby Gentry number 3, It's Only Make Believe 4. So he was having top 10 hits, and.
But these are all massive songs, aren't they? I mean, when you think about it, and timeless classic. I mean, they've stood the test of time, really. I mean, I don't know whether people remember sort of Glenn Campbell musically these days, but all those tunes were sort of big hitters.
I just didn't realise there was such a gap of 5 years between his last top 10 and Rhinestone Cowboy. There's one called Bonaparte's Retreat, which was a hit in the US country chart, and in Australia it was number 4. So it wasn't a hit. Anyway, I wonder why that one was such a big hit in Australia. Interesting. But I think he had a song called Southern Nights in 1977. That was his last top 40 appearance.
Okay.
I mean, in the UK, that is. I mean, he's got other hits in the US country for years and years. But number 6, again, greatest hits. But then, it's still a good jumping off point for some of these. We'll look at some of the other bands in a minute, but these are definitely the big ones. The Eagles, their greatest hits was the 6th biggest selling album. Now, I don't think we've ever discussed the Eagles and which one, but again, I'm sure they were bigger in the States than they were over here. Probably had more hits over there.
I think the Eagles were huge in America, and I don't actually have a lot. I couldn't list you a list of Eagles tracks, and then you'll tell me like 15 of them. Like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Let's see. We'll look at the UK to start with. We'll look around the sort of this sort of time. They started in about 72. We'll look at the ones that were hits in America before when they weren't even having hits in the UK. They had a number 9 hit with Witchy Woman.
Witchy Woman? I don't remember
that one. My dad has a greatest hits. He probably has that greatest hits. He was never like a massive fan, but I think he liked the song Desperados. I think it was on a Western movie or something, and so I do know some of their songs. But then Peaceful Easy Feeling, number 22. Even they had some singles in their own home country that didn't do very well. They had Tequila Sunrise, Outlaw Man, James Dean.
Right.
These were all like 64, 59, 77. So,
yes.
Of course, then there's also the country chart, which is a different thing altogether. But their first UK hit was One of These Nights, which was number 1 in America, but number 23. Then Lying Eyes, number 2 in America, 23 with UK. Take It to the Limit, number 4, number 12 with us. New Kid in Town, number 1 in the US, number 20 in the UK. Hotel California, number 1 in America. It was number 8 in the UK. It's funny because we're into 1977 by then. I think I was, in my head, Hotel California's a little bit earlier than 77. I don't know why. I kind of think of the other bands that they were compared to, and those are perhaps slightly earlier than them. But I mean, and really after Hotel California, it was sort of heading back down. As far as singles were concerned, I'm sure. Albums are a different matter, but they had in America they had another number 1. They had Heartache Tonight, number 1 in 1979. That was only that was only number 40. It had Please Come Home for Christmas, that only got to 30. The Long Run, number 8. Number 66 in the UK. I Can't Tell You Why, number 8 in America, not even a chart position, or I don't know if it just wasn't released as a single. Although it was a hit in other countries like Canada and New Zealand.
But the interesting thing, I suppose, is that they were huge, and I think the way, again, people would hear back in those days, they would hear a track on the radio and they would seek out the greatest hits album, and people did want the hits. They've always wanted, they don't necessarily want the album tracks.
Well, that might explain the ABBA thing with the greatest hits, that the people who bought Waterloo or they bought Mamma Mia, but they didn't. They hadn't bought the albums, and perhaps I don't even know how readily available those albums were to start with. I know I Do, which has become quite a famous song for them, wasn't a hit in the UK. It was under the 30 anyway, and they didn't have. Some of these bands, they take a little while to get started, even when they do as well as ABBA did with Waterloo. But I don't know. I guess we can have a little talk about number 7, the very best of Slim Whitman.
Oh right, Slim.
We probably talked about him. We probably talked about him in the 50s or whatever, or 60s when we were talking about. We probably.
But it's definitely a country and western. Yeah. I feel that's country and western. I feel he wore a big hat, but I may be mixing him up with Slim Panatella and the Marlboro Man. I don't know.
He did.
Did he have a pencil moustache?
Yes, he does. His UK hits were Indian Love Call in 1952, number 7. China Doll.
Oh, and I'm calling you.
China Doll, number 15. Rosemary.
A little China Doll. That's not the one. That's the Bowie. Stop it.
We have Rosemary, 1954. That was a number 1 in the UK. Number 8, Serenade. I'll Take You Home Again, Kathleen, number 7. I don't know if that was probably a cover even when he did it.
Well, my dad used to sing that to my mother, for she was a Kathleen.
He had Happy Anniversary, number 14 in the UK, in 1974. That's quite.
He basically covered all the celebrations, didn't he?
I mean, he had a lot of other hits. He had more hits in America, even in the.
He knew where the money was.
Even in the early 70s, he was having top 10 hits in America.
I wonder if he stayed slim throughout his entire life. I mean, it must be kind of weird if in his later career he was touring and he was sort of built like a barn.
I should probably add that these bigger hits were the US country charts, but then I think us UK people find the American charts a little bit complicated. There are so many of them. I'm never 100% sure which is the chart. The sort of, I mean, I know there's the Billboard and everything, but
Billboard,
I think that's what we've gone on when we've done these discussions. It's usually been the Billboard, but
indeed.
The 8th biggest selling album in 76, A Night at the Opera by Queen. I don't know if we've had a proper big conversation about Queen. I hesitate because...
well, there are a lot of big experts out there.
If we didn't mention him in episode 2, which I don't know until I edited it, sorry listeners, I will know by the time you do episode 4, because Queen's going to come back up again. So if we don't have a big chat about them now, and we haven't already in the episode I've forgotten, then we've got plenty of other opportunities.
I like to think my efforts are so memorable.
Well, I did 106 episodes last year. I'm sorry.
I don't remember either, Paul, to be fair. I edited a show that you were in on Monday, and I was sat here earlier trying to think what it was about. And it's Wednesday? It's 2 days ago, and I can't remember a thing about it. And I edited the whole... I sat there all day with you in my ears, sort of sorting out a show, and 2 days later, I'm thinking, what the hell did we talk about?
I was asked if I could comment for a book that's being written about Doctor Who tape zines. And I did a couple of possible entries that weren't very good and were like one-off editions.
Great Oaks, Paul, Great Oaks.
But I was asked to give anecdotes about doing that, and this was 30 years ago, and I did it. I did it once and never did it again. It's not something I consider as one of my greatest hits. No. So I have very little memory of it.
The ghosts of your past.
I was listening to it for this episode I was doing of Old Bit, and I did a review about the Tooley Street exhibition, Doctor Who exhibition from 1988 or 9 or whatever, and I'm listening to it, and it's all perfectly. I don't remember going there or doing it. Any of the things I'm talking about doing, I did
Could
say
have been anybody.
I did say I know. I said to Alan and Nick, who are doing the book, I'll listen to it again and see if it triggers anything. I just don't think it's going to. It's different if somebody said, "Oh, tell us about the making of the Charlotte podcast," or "Tell us about the making of Sutton Park." I did these things for lots of years. I'm sure I could talk for a while about them, but when it's just a one-off thing you did, I don't even know. It may have been one day of my life. I don't know how long it took me to record it. Probably not that long. It's funny when some people have much better memories, don't they?
The only thing again, listeners might sympathise with this, but I remember very, very long time ago. When I was a student, we tried instead of writing letters, me and a friend tried to send each other audio cassettes. It wasn't the most dynamic 90 minutes or 45 minutes of anybody's life, quite frankly. Listening to me droning on my own for 45 minutes is nobody's idea of fun, especially when after about 15 seconds I've run out of things to talk about.
Well, a lot of the tapes that have been appearing in these episodes, listeners will know by now, were exactly that. But we don't have many examples of what I sent to people. We have what's coming back. So it's a nice way of sharing voices that aren't mine. But we did used to fill the tapes by putting music or because... when I sent a message to my friend Elaine, she was always buying music. I was always buying music. We'd fill at least half the tape up with, these are my favourite tracks off this new album by so and so.
Content is king, isn't it? But it must be very difficult generally in that sort of area of production to come up with new stuff. I always think that fanzines generally, I know we've got sidetracked here, but fanzines generally they quite often relied on opinion pieces or cartoons or just funny takes on things, but actually to try and do that spontaneously and only in audio. I mean, this is obviously coming from us who've been doing podcasting now for several years, but it's not actually that straightforward when you're trying to interest people who are a fan of a thing, if you see what I mean.
I think because I've got so little memory of the things that are being talked about, or because it's somebody else talking, I can't say that I'm choosing the clips from nostalgia. It's nice to hear those people's voices. No. I hope I'm picking the clips because it's something interesting they're saying, and the feedback has been that people have enjoyed them, and it doesn't matter that they don't know them, or perhaps in some cases they know the more recent versions of them from being on the podcast. I think sometimes, gosh, people are kind of, wow, that's so and so who's in the show now. That's Nick or Troby talking 30 years ago, and it's sort of interesting. Going into Queen, I guess 75, 76, they're really just beginning with their hits, really. They had Seven Seas of Rye in 74, and Killer Queen in 74, Now I'm Here, number 11. Yeah, 10, 2, Killer Queen was very big. Then Bohemian Rhapsody, of course, and then You're My Best Friend was the follow-up single, and that got to number 7 after Bohemian Rhapsody being number 1 for the first time it was number 1. Then in 76, Have You're My Best Friend, Somebody to Love, that was number 2. But they also had a flop single, or relatively flop single, Tie Your Mother Down, number 30.
Tie Your Mother, which they played it in concerts for years.
31. It was a bigger hit in the Netherlands, number 10, but they also sort of knocked back. They had Killer Queen number 12, Bohemian Rhapsody number 2, You're My Best Friend 16, Somebody to Love number 13. Those were the US chart positions, and Tie Your Mother Down only got to 49. So I did not knock them back. That was a bit of a knockback, that one. Good Old Fashioned Lover Boy number 17. That was also 76. And then we're into 77, and We Are the Champions, which was a hit in America and in the UK and other places as well. Spread Your Wings, that it's from News of the World, that's a single that only got to 34. So I remember with the going much further ahead, if you look at the chart positions of the Eurythmics, they'd have a massive hit, and then the next single would be like 32 or something, and then it'd be number 3, and some of the ones that didn't do well, some of my favourites.
People often, I think the problem is that sometimes people like a song but they don't like the next one, especially if you are, bands like Queen, bands like Eurythmics did kind of mix and match their styles, and so that's not, I suppose that's not necessarily unexpected, but it is kind of interesting that these bands that you always assume were successful all the time really did have these peaks and troughs. Although a lot of those tracks did, like I say, end up on the live albums later as well. So they weren't without merit and without popularity. It's just that, fans are funny things.
I remember, Elton John has a phase in the late 70s, early 80s where his singles don't do so well, as do Queen. I don't want to talk too much more about Queen because I think we'll come back to them when we're talking about, depending how we'll definitely creep on through the 70s. But I think we can sort of, I'm sure we'll see their name pop up. We'll talk about them. But so we can see that they were doing really well, but they'd have the odd single that kind of wouldn't do so well. And I've never been like. They're one of the few bands. Well, I do own some albums of, but I definitely can't say I'm an aficionado to the point where I know album tracks or. And so those ones those songs there that weren't. But that would be the song. Those would be the songs that I would be if I was on YouTube at 11 o'clock at night or something. It would be those singles I would be looking to listen to, because I'd be like, okay, so what does whatever those titles were? I've moved on the titles, but the ones that didn't do so well, those are the ones I'd want to hear now, because it's a bit like when I go back and watch Doctor Who, I tend to watch my least favourite ones because I can't remember them as well.
Right.
I find sometimes you know something too. I probably wouldn't sit down and watch We Are the Champions video, because it's that I could sing most of that in my head, because it's just so famous. But
yes.
Now the ninth biggest selling album of 1976 is Desire by Bob Dylan.
Right.
I should probably lay my cards on the table and say I've never been a Bob Dylan fan.
Right.
But I'm not saying but I do like some of his songs, and I think I like perhaps his 60s stuff. Just find his His voice can be tuneless at times if he's not careful. I remember having when he did Travelling Wilburys. I remember having the. I didn't have the first one, but I had the second album. I think that might be the one. Roy Orbison may have died by then, so I don't think he's on there at all. And so there was Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, George Harrison, Jeff Lynne. I think by that stage, majority of the songs went lead vocal to Bob Dylan, who is my least favourite of those four vocalists. I'd much rather George Harrison. I'd much rather Jeff Lynne, and I'd much rather Tom Petty. But I think he's one of those people that people either. He's probably a bit of a Marmite person. People either love him or people don't.
Yeah.
I just never.
I came quite late to Bob Dylan and now can quite enjoy his greatest hits album or whatever. But I must admit it is quite a narrow band of appeal. But I was sort of pointed at Dylan by a friend of mine a long time ago, and I'd sort of never listened to his stuff, and it did come from a place of nostalgia in the end, but there are Subterranean Homesick Blues and things like that are very good, and of course some of these things a lot of Dylan has been covered.
Well, I think I like the covers. I love the Bird stuff. I think I just prefer the Birds singing his songs than I do him. The funny thing is, this Desire one, Desire album has been an album I've always meant to get into, because I remember I'm trying to find out what film it was in, but the song "The Hurricane," I think I'm sure it was used in a film, and I liked it, and I thought, oh well, maybe this is the album I ought to be trying out. But I've never got there yet. But there's something will happen. I don't try and force these things. This is not just with music. This is with writing.
Well, this is it. I mean, the worst thing you can do is say, "Oh, well, I should like this, therefore I'm going to." I mean, because that just, in the end, I think that can. I remember a very, very long time ago, when I was a very young person, people would. We'd sit there at 2-3 in the morning, and people were doing whatever they did at 2 or 3 in the morning, but they'd put LPs on, and I always remember people would always put Led Zeppelin on, and I would sort of sit there, and it would just give me a headache. And then years later, I came to Led Zeppelin through a different route and loved it, but at the time it was just, oh God, they're putting this on. So I think you do have to find your own way to all music, really. You don't necessarily have to like it because other people do. You have to find a way of liking it yourself. Much the same way the Smiths completely passed me by when I was a student, and then I got massive nostalgia for them after I ended being a student, and I remembered all the times that we'd been listening to the Smiths, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I'm the same with some of his music, some of the TV shows. I think, well, I'll wait. Something will. If I'm not sure, that something will make me want to come back to the show, or even with my poetry. I never thought I'd be a poet, and then I wrote so much for many years. Yeah. And then suddenly I just got to the point where I thought, I think I'm repeating myself now. I don't think I've got anything new to say, and I think everything's very. I think I should stop now. And other than writing one or two lyrics for songs I've done with my friend Harry, I haven't done much recently. But one day I'll
go back to it.
I'll probably go back to it, or maybe I'll find a different rhyming structure or a different something will trigger. Something will trigger me. I don't do a great deal of writing because I do the podcast, and I'm able to be so creative in the podcast. But I had a friend last year who I wanted to come back and play a character, but it was too complicated to not just say let's improvise it. So I wrote him a script for his lines. So what I have written in the last 5 years has mainly been guest spots for people on the show who need a script to do their bits. And I have thought about doing a Shy Life podcast novel, which isn't as crazy as it sounds.
No, but you and Nick putting out that book last year, I think again that sort of triggers, once you've done it, it sort of triggers you to want to do another one. And I think that these things sometimes they can sit quite in limbo for a long time, and then suddenly you think, oh well, you know what, I'll come back to that and do that again.
Although the Shy Life podcast is obviously an audio thing, the writer in me would like to have a Shy Life podcast thing that I can hold in my hand, and so, which is why I've
done 3 visual volumes of Round the Archives stuff.
Yes, that's right.
And that's an audio thing. It feels sometimes that these things can cross media.
I wanted to get. I've got some merchandise from Redbubble. In fact, I have a Patreon site fan, folks, but I was kind of getting a bit envious of my Patreon supporters getting their merchandise and thinking, I quite like a mug with. So I thought actually I can't subscribe to my own Patreon. They don't let you do that, but I can go on Redbubble and do something very similar. So I've got some Shy Life podcast mugs and hats and little notebooks.
You're going to end up buying your own Patreon products from eBay.
I tried to join my own. I thought it's just easier to join my own Patreon. It was like, you can't do that. You can't be your own fan.
Well, you could if you had another online identity.
I could do that, but it was easier just to go on Redbubble.
Cardboard moustache and
I could have. It was just easier to do Redbubble then. It didn't feel quite as sort of but I was thinking you're hearing it here first, listeners, but I kind of like the idea of doing a Shy Life podcast book where I'm going to the bar and I'm kind of talking to the barman about, I must tell you about my friend Ick, or I should tell you about Bettina Dupre, and then I can sort of, I don't know, I've started the first chapter, but we'll see. Anyway, let's get back to this.
Graphic novel.
That might be a best way of doing it. I'll get my people to Ick. No, he's not my people anymore. He won't talk to me. Comedy. And do you have any people other than you, or do you have any fictional people who can meet my fictional? You need to invent somebody who can meet my people.
I'm still trying to live down the shame of doing a Christmas story on my show.
That's good. Nothing wrong with that. Number 10. We'll do number 10, and then we'll do a quick look at just some of the smaller groups before we have to finish. But so number 10 was Wings at the Speed of Sound. So. Which for some reason, I think it's because of the title. I always think it's their live album, and then I think, then I remember it's not their live album.
Right.
It's actually a studio album. But
a neighbour of mine at college bought a three album Wings album. I think it had 3 LPs in it. A triple album. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, he was a big Wings fan.
Well, I like Wings, but I always had to be very diplomatic when we were talking about the 70s, and I can only explain it by the fact that, and I know isn't it Alan Partridge who thinks that Wings are better than the Beatles, and I think Nick is very much, he likes the music of his time, and the Beatles isn't of his time, although he was born towards the end of them, whereas I'm not so much like, I wasn't born anywhere near the Beatles, and I was only born a little bit during Wings, but so it's just the different way of looking at music, and Nick loves Wings much more than he likes the Beatles, but and I'm like sitting there as a Beatles fan going, no, nobody seriously thinks that Wings is better than the Beatles, do they? I guess lots of people do, but no, not for me, I'm afraid. But I do like Wings, but I just don't like them as much as
Beatles. 70s Lennon is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you'd necessarily, it's not necessarily the most popular Lennon music.
Yeah, I like some of 70s Harrison as well. But
that's right. But they all did interesting work.
Yes, they did interesting things, definitely. But yes, it's yes. We could talk about that all day.
Well, again, I remember a neighbour of mine coming up the corridor with the "Give My Regards to Broad Street" soundtrack. So McCartney had appeal for a long time after the Beatles.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder how much of me likes Paul McCartney as my favourite Beatle because I'm called Paul and he's called Paul. And when you were a little Beatles fan,
simpatico. Were you named after him? Was your mother?
I like to think. Well, no, not really, not to a major extent.
Are you Paul, John, Ringo, George?
No, sadly not.
Is your brother called Ringo? These are questions you ask yourself. If you are called Paul and your brother's called Ringo, your parents may have been Beatles fans.
Oh wow! I never thought of it like that. I would rather be. I mean, when I watched the Get Back documentary, I was still a Paul fan over everybody else. I just thought it was amazing. Like he'd probably been doing practice before he even got there, but he sits down and he's like, "Oh, I'm just going to write this. Oh, let it be." And you just watch it. Like he's writing this song. I mean, I know some people who don't like things like Long and Winding Road, and they are quite middle of the roady type songs, but they're classics of the later period of. And he's just sitting there, kind of tinkling away, and it's cutting. And meanwhile, John Lennon's kind of sharing sort of loving glances at Yoko and not really being that interested. And George Harrison stormed out, and I'm thinking Paul's getting on with the work, and he's writing these classic songs.
They're sort of instantly nostalgic. I think that's the interesting thing about the Beatles. They feel like they come from a much older place. One of those strange and peculiar things recently, I was tricked into watching how dare I, a Richard Curtis film, because I watched Yesterday, and I don't know if you've seen Yesterday, but it's a peculiar film, but I didn't find it appalling. I thought it was going to
be appalling, so I hadn't watched it, but maybe I should give it a go. Only because isn't Ed Sheeran in it at some point, and making sense.
There are problems with it, as there are with most Richard Curtis movies. There are reasons not to watch them, but
I just thought it would make me cross. But in a way, I got a little bit cross at both the Queen and the Elton John movies, because there were things that were skimmed over, or things that would
mess with timelines
and stuff. And I'd be getting, oh no, that's not right, that's not right, I can't. And I'm sure I think they're really good movies if you just like Queen in a very casual way.
Yeah.
But even somebody who isn't a super Queen fan, or even a super Elton John fan, but likes them enough, but I think I like my facts to be right.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, isn't it? Fans can be hard work for other fans sometimes, and I think that's interesting. I mean, say if someone decided to make a TV play about the story of the relaunch of Doctor Who, and they went straight from Chris Eccleston to Peter Capaldi and missed out all the other stuff. You know, fans at home would be, outrage. But if you're telling the story, you know, maybe it wouldn't matter so much to the casual viewer, but people will nitpick and pull things apart if that's not right. And I think sometimes fandom itself, Beatles fans, whatever, football fans, they really can be the worst enemy of other fans, because they see the problem and don't see the love, if you see what I'm saying. They can sort of say, oh, well, that fact is wrong, and they can get obsessed about that little fact being wrong, rather than just sort of wallowing in the whole crazy ride.
I remember having an argument with somebody, and I know they were just trying to wind me up, but I was just trying to sort of step aside and say, I don't think what I'm saying is because I'm a Doctor Who fan. So when Doctor Who came back, a friend, the partner of a friend, was trying to wind me up by sort of saying, "Oh, Doctor Who's rubbish. It shouldn't come back." I think this might be even after it started to be successful again. And he's like, "No, I mean, it's just that was his opinion, but it was also." And I said, "Yeah, but taking aside that I like it and you don't like it, it makes the BBC so much money. It sells so well. It makes total sense to bring it back." And I just realised there's no point talking to him, because he just wants to be pedantic and to wind me up, even though I'm trying to be a non-Doctor Who fan and say, even from a bank manager's point of view, it makes sense to bring Doctor Who back.
Well, I can honestly say, I mean, you know, on the one hand, because there's that little voice in your head, when I was watching the Queen movie and when I was watching the Elton John movie, both of them, there were moments in it where I thought, well, that track wasn't then. They didn't do that track then, or they didn't. And then you sort of sit back and go, yeah, but actually, I get the point. I get what they're trying to do here. They've got 2 hours to tell the story. And you have to sometimes, in any adaptation of a novel, they will compress, stories. They will make two characters into one. In any, even, when they're telling let's face it, you think about a series like they've done about, the life, a life story of somebody, they're always going to have to move things around just to get the story told. So you've got to forgive it. But sometimes I think a lot of fans of a thing can get so obsessed with the small thing that's wrong that, like I say, they just lose sight of the bigger. But it's quite a fun movie.
Well, I suppose we should go out to Wings and talk about how they would.
Sorry,
it's fine. We have to. The more we wander off the plot, the less likely is we repeat something we said in that mysterious episode 2 that I haven't.
I always think this. I think this on my own show as well. Sometimes it's just nice to take something as a starting point and see where you end up.
Exactly. Well, it's much easier to do that in this kind of episodes because we're not sticking to we have to get through the top. So yes, this is kind of what the intention was. Why I thought it was worth doing these episodes, even though we've, Nick and I had done the 70s. It's not going to be the same. It's going to be a different. It's going to be a different conversation and a different way of looking at it. So yeah, I mean, by 76 they've had a lot of their big hits because they started with things like Give Ireland Back to the Irish and Mary Had a Little Lamb, which were kind of. I think they're ones that don't even end up on greatest hits. I think. Give Ireland Back to the Irish was number 16, Mary Had a Little Lamb number 9, then you've got Hi 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 number 5, My Love number 9, Live and Let Die number 9, Helen Wheels number 12, Jet number 7, Band on the Run number 3, Junior's Farm number 16, Listen to What the Man Said number 6, and actually by 75 this is the first time we come to a single that didn't do so well from the album Venus and Mars, Letting Go, number 41. I don't really, again, even though I've listened to quite a lot of Wings albums, it's not one that I remember. I haven't listened. I probably listened to actual albums of Wings back when, more like in the 80s, as I haven't necessarily gone back to those albums that much recently. 76 was a very good year. The Wings at the Speed of Sound era, Silly Love Songs was number 2, and then Let 'Em In was number 2, and then you've got a live version of Maybe I'm Amazed, 28. Mud of Kintyre, of course, in 77, number 1, and With a Little Luck, number 5. I do like the Wings songs, which are a bit more like some of his actually, was it a Wings song? Was it a solo? The Admiral Wolsey one, where it kind of goes through its characters like he did in the Beatles, and it goes from I think that might be a solo one, but he still has characters, and he still you do get. I mean, he does have some very good things like Jet and Band on the Run are very catchy tunes, and but you still get some of the imaginative characters and now let's just have a look through some of the other
what
games.
else was happening.
What else was happening? We don't necessarily have to talk about them for ages, and we can always come back to them. I feel like we talked about the biggest selling single, Brotherhood of Man, Save Your Kisses for Me. I feel like we might have talked a bit about Brotherhood of Man before. If we don't, then I think they'll be back in 77, so we can always come back to them. I remember us talking about Pussycat, I think, Mississippi. I think they were a bit of a one-hit wonder, but they got to number 1. Dr. Hook, I feel like we talked a bit about before.
Yeah, my sister was a big Dr. Hook fan.
Yeah.
Yes.
The one that did well in 76, or the one that's the highest one, was a little bit more. But I always remember if you're in love with a beautiful woman. Chicago, If You Leave Me Now. I Love to Love, But My Baby Loves to Dance by Tina Charles.
Right, yeah, I do remember that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Disco.
Well, it's quite early for disco. You're sort of. It's a bit like. People think about punk being sort of 77, whatever, but it was already on the way in 76, and so was disco.
Okay. Well, maybe it turns up on all those disco compilations. Then maybe that's what I mean.
Yeah, no. Yeah, she did have other UK hits. Dance, Little Lady Dance, number 6. I don't remember that.
Right.
Dr. Love, number 4. I'm going to have to check some of these out. Dr. Love sounds interesting.
Calling Dr. Love.
Oh, is it?
No, that's not.
No, that's Dr. Beat.
I get these things mixed up in my mind. I'm getting very old.
Yeah, she did have. Yeah, she had other not quite so big hits, but I'll have to explore those. What else have we got? We've got, of course, we've got the 4 seasons. But I remember we did talk a little bit about the 4 seasons in our first episode, and also about Frankie Valli. Shawaddy Waddy has come up in conversation, but I don't know if we actually talked about chart positions and what were their big hits. But they were part of the.
I'm sure they're still running.
Yeah, quite possibly.
There's still a version of them. Yeah. It's like I say, they're the Triggers broom.
They had they had an album out in 2016 for sure, and actually they've had compilations as recently as 2019.
I'm sure I read in the last couple of years that the last original member had finally retired or something like that.
Yeah, because
but there's still 15 of them or whatever.
Let's have a look, because they must have at least 10 top 10 hits. Apologies if we have covered them, but I don't think we have, because this is feels like it's new to me. That wouldn't be the first time I've said that, and then I've gone to an episode, and I know we did an episode when we were talking about the either 60s or 50s, and I thought when we talked.
Can I tell you the same old stories I keep on telling you?
Well, we talked about 1959, and I said coming up in 1960, and I was like, I don't recognise any of those, and then I went back and listened to the 1961, which of course we'd already recorded, and I was like, yeah, we talked about that. So my memory is not worth anything. But they had their first.
That's why we have podcasts.
Yes, well, hopefully the listeners' memory is just as bad.
that's what we count on.
Yeah.
Should we put out a repeat season? It says me from time to time. Will anybody notice?
Call it a different title. I promise I haven't done that yet. This is promise. Their first single, "Hey Rock and Roll," was number 2. That was 1974. Rock and Roll Lady. That's funny. I don't really. I guess I sort of think of Shawaddy Waddy as being more mid.
Well, of course they were doing a 50s retro thing. So they were doing a 50s retro thing in the 70s. That now they're still doing 50 years later.
Yeah,
so it's now a 70-year-old.
I think I tend to think of it being more sort of mid to late 70s, but I tend to think of 74 is still the end of towards the end of glam, but. Rock and Roll Lady number 15, Hey Mr. Christmas 13, Sweet Music 14, 3 Steps to Heaven number 2, Heartbeat number 7. Had a couple of singles, Heavenly and Trocadero, that were in the 30s. Under the Moon of Love in 76 number 1. That was a big hit, but it was their only hit in 76. 77, When number 3, You Got What It Takes. I guess this is why I think they're from this sort of period, because their string of top 10 hits was 77 and 78, even though they'd been around for 4 or 5 years. When number 3, You Got What It Takes 2, Dancing Party 4, I Wonder Why 2, A Little Bit of Soap 5, Pretty Little Angel Eyes 5.
Blimey.
There were a lot of songs around. Well, they were ahead. I never realised this. I've often thought, because I like them both. There's Angel Eyes by ABBA and there's Angel Eyes by Roxy Music, but that's in 79. What I didn't realise was that Shawaddy Waddy had got there the year before with Pretty Little Angel Eyes. Then we have Remember Then, 17. The last charting single is You're My Soul and Inspiration in 1983, which got to number 103. So Darts were a little bit like Shawaddy Waddy, weren't they? I don't quite know what the difference was between them. I mean, different people, different songs.
Well, the show band, weren't they, really? Yeah, I think Darts were just kind of like a natural. They were using that sort of model, really, and although they had the wacky one. The wacky one sort of made them different enough to be different, but yeah, they were doing the same. The doo-wop band, if you like. Yeah.
You got You To Me Everything by The Real Thing, Forever and Ever, but by Slick. Now Slick is the band that Midge Ure came from, before joining Ultravox. But
yes, Slick. Oh, Slick had the comic strip in Looking.
Yeah, they only really had that one song that was really big. They released quite a few singles between 70s.
Well, Looking tried to make them huge.
Yeah.
They wanted them to be the next Flintlock, obviously.
They had a single called Requiem, which was the follow-up. That got to 24, but none of their other singles really charted. Well, none of the other singles charted. Only those two. Although they kept going until 77. But then Ultravox, I think, were around before.
I've been listening to my Ultravox collection recently, the collection album, and it's there's some stonkers on there. There's some real good songs on there. You know, I think One Small Day is one of my favourite songs of that era. You know, and The Thin Wall as well. That sort of style of Ultravox appeals to me.
I do like a lot.
And of course,
I do like a lot of Ultravox.
And it's like, I don't know, because normally the sort of electronic drum beat thing really doesn't appeal to me very much, but for some reason they seem to get it. I think they got the bass line right for those few singles.
Yeah. We've got Candy Staten, Young Hearts Run Free, number 2.
I keep thinking of Staten Island Ferry, and I always think it's kind of like I always think it must be a road junction somewhere, Candy Staten, but I don't think it is.
She had another top 10 hit in 77 with Nights on Broadway. Right. You Got the Love, that's The Source featuring Candy Staten. That's in the 90s, 91, number 4. And then it was a hit again. Number 3 in 97. So she did have other singles, but those were her only really. They were other ones were outside the 40. I can see a couple that we probably ought to talk about, but I think they'll come back. We'll see. So we may leave
in a year's time when we record the next one.
It's whether I remember. This is the trouble. Now we're into this season, and I'll probably be releasing episodes every 6 weeks to 2 months. So I shouldn't.
Crikey, some work for me to do.
We'll have to get on. We'll have to get on doing new ones. But we've got the Wurzels in '76. They're brand new.
You forget how big the novelty bands could be. I mean, it's like the Goodies as well. They actually sold a lot of records then. And of course, I don't think the Wurzels consider themselves a novelty band, although I think on some level they are or were, but because they were doing comedy songs, really. I mean, they might have thought they were the greatest musicians ever, but they were comic songs rather than what you might call mainstream songs. But again, they're all songs, and they're all songs people like. So I mean, are they any less valid than the Wombles?
Yeah, well, we've got people like Billy Ocean, Love Really Hurts Without You.
Oh dear, God, has he been around that long?
Yeah, I always forget that he always comes across as being so slick. I always think.
Yeah, I tend to associate him with Miami Vice in the 80s.
Well, I also consider. I always thought he was an American act because he's not. He's British. Just his songs are so slick and MTV, and I think it's because those were the ones that were really big. But I just never realised he was British. I think we should probably. Champion him a lot more. He should be a lot more sort of. I don't know.
I'd say there was this kind of music that seemed to get that sort of, I don't know, it's like Warm Summer Nights in Miami sort of thing that Miami Vice played on so well. And I feel that Billy Ocean feels part of that, even though he may not have been, But that's sort of the same with Lionel Richie as well. That sort of, that really quotes cool, but it feels mid-80s. It really does feel mid-80s.
Yeah,
it's very interesting. But then again, for people to become that popular, they have to have started a few years earlier.
I think maybe he had a bit of a reinvention, because he definitely seems like somebody who he was doing singles apparently as Les Charles in 71, but they've got Love Really Hurts Without You, number 2 in the UK. Love on Delivery, LOD, number 19. Stop Me If You've Heard.
Maybe he started off as Billy Puddle or something and just,
became an ocean over there. You've got one that was number 2.
Billy C.
You've got in 1977. You've got one I've never heard of, number 2. Red Light Spells Danger. I don't.
Right.
I mean, sometimes you recognise them when you hear them, but but then he had singles in '79 that got to number 54, number 42, number 82. Actually. I think this must have been. Oh, weird. Sorry. He seems to have released a song. Well, he released a song, European Queen, No More Love on the Run, but then he seems to release it again as Caribbean Queen, which I recognise. But as European Queen, it only got to number 82, and
that's a reinvention happening before your very eyes.
And then it's number 6 when it comes back as a hit. But you got Lover Boy, Suddenly, When the Going Gets Tough, and then again.
Go and Get Stuffed.
Yeah.
Go and Get Stuffed. That one. But that was wasn't it? It was from the Michael Douglas films, wasn't it? The Romancing the Stone, Kathleen Turner.
And then I remember
Vehicles.
Get Out of My Dream, Get Into My Car, number 3. That's one of his biggest hits.
Nothing weird about that at all. That's curb crawling, isn't it?
I'm going to talk about very briefly about one more person before we finish. But just having a look, I'll tell you other people who had hit names. We won't necessarily talk about them. Hoping that we'll come back to them. The Shy Lights were in the top 50.
The Shy Life?
The Shy Lights.
Did they do with
how you pronounce it?
You should ask them.
The Shy Lights. The Shy Lights. I don't know.
The Shy Lights podcast.
Yes. Yes, they're big. They had. Have you seen her? Is that the same? Tell me. Have you seen? No. Is that that one?
It sounds about right.
Homely Girl.
To be on that funk CD I've got somewhere. That's something collected funk classics, soul and funk or something.
You don't have to go number 3. That was 76. Have you seen her? Time for Love. I wasn't going to talk about them. But
same words like funk is when I realised actually where my tooth problem is. It's the letter F I'm going to struggle with.
Now, Brian Ferry. I think I'd like to talk about Brian Ferry.
Oh, you're all the ones with F now, just because I said that.
I'd like to talk about Brian Ferry and Roxy Music, but they do come back. I think this is probably around the time that Roxy Music's having their first rest. So I think we'll talk about Brian Ferry, hopefully, if I haven't forgotten.
Unless we already did.
Yeah. Well, when Roxy Music comes back around 79, then we can talk more about Brian Ferry and Roxy Music then. We'll just have to remember to do that. The last one I want to talk about... I forgot about that one. I forgot about, as well as... Combine Harvester, that the Wurzels did I'm a Cider Drinker, which was to the tune of Paloma Blanca.
He drinks it all of the day.
The last one, and I'm not sure whether it's a good way to end, depending if you're a fan or not, but 1976 was a big year for Leo Sayer.
Leo, the Laughing Clown.
Yeah, and I don't think we've necessarily talked about him.
Big hair Leo. Yes.
He's one also who wrote songs for other people and also had singles far late. When I remember watching the 80s Top of the Pops, he was definitely having hits sort of into the 80s.
I remember he looked a little bit like Dungaree's Leo was always a bit children's television presenter, and you felt that maybe that he thought he might be able to present going live instead of Philip Schofield or something.
He had his first hit in 73, The Show Must Go On, number 2, One Man Band, number 6, Long Tall Glasses, number 4, Moonlighting, number 2, You Make Me Feel Like Dancing, 76, number 2, When I Need You, in 77, number 1, How Much Love, number 10, I Can't Stop Loving You, number 6. These were up until the end of the 70s. And then More Than I Can Say in 1980, number 2. Have You Ever Been in Love, number 10, that's in 82.
Did Leo Sayer ever do any acting? Do I vaguely remember him doing it?
So I vaguely feel like he was definitely on a reality show, but I'm not sure. I didn't realise he was English Australian. It says he's English.
Wow.
I didn't realise there was any Australian connection. I feel like he was on a reality show and was grumpy on it. I don't know if he was on a Celebrity Big Brother or something, or whether he did do acting.
No, I'm probably thinking of David Essex. I think David Essex did quite a bit of acting, and I just thought maybe he tried to go down the Essex route.
He had it was one of those ones where a bit of a song gets or an old song gets modernised, but he actually had a number 1 hit in 2006 with Thunder in My Heart Again. But I can't remember whether it was a song that it's a bit like that one. I think Elton John had a song that had been on an album that hadn't done too well that
suddenly
because
got found. Yeah,
because Thunder in My Heart originally comes from '77.
Okay,
but so it was a big year for him. I think next time we talk, we'll move on to '77 and see what was going on in '77.
Okay.
But Martin, thank you for joining us. If you'll just hold back a few minutes, we're going to have to try and dig Ick out again. But
always a pleasure.
He does seem to respond quite well to you, and as I said, we do have problems, and depending when this comes out. This is being recorded whilst he's still in contract, but it might be broadcast. Depends if he decides to renew. It's difficult.
Maybe I'll find a cubby hole to allow him to rent some space.
Maybe he's not going to end up as a co-host on Vision on Sound. You're not going to poach my biggest star, are you?
No. No.
Good, right.
No. Yes, no.
Listeners, can I trust him? This is a cliffhanger.
I don't. No, good Lord, no. I'm.
You can't afford him. He's too expensive.
Precisely. Yes, I have a zero budget.
And I know you say you've got quite a lot of things in your flat and in your house, and with all his tentacles waving around, he's bound to knock something off the shelf.
Well, precisely. Well, I do that, and I would have got the standard number of tentacles.
Anyway, listeners, we'll be back again soon for more chats, and I hope we haven't repeated ourselves too much. If we have, we hope you'll conveniently forget it. But, okie dokie. Right, well, we'll be back again soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. You will talk to him. You'll be gentle. You won't. You know. He does respond very well to you. You got him kind of singing for a few moments in that first episode.
Well, yes. I'm never quite sure how, but yes.
I mean, it's just we have to be very careful with him. As I say, at the time of recording, we don't know whether he's renewing or not. But he may just want to. He may just want to go away for a while and have a break, and then we can get him back. I'm not saying if he doesn't sign again, then it doesn't mean to say that he's gone for good. I think it's always it's like with Doctor Who. An actor says, "Oh, I don't think I want to come back," and then they ask him again, "Oh, well, maybe," but and then eventually they.
I think he's just considering his options, Paul. I mean, as long as the offer you've got on the table is
it's
reasonable.
like he is.
He's not going to go to GB News, is he?
Not only is he's the sort of big hitter of the Charlotte podcast, he's also the pin-up of the show. I mean, what are we going to do? He's like the David Cassidy of the Charlotte podcast, is he?
Maybe you need to give him a cut of the merchandise.
That would be nice if anyone would like to buy anything.
A Nick hat.
Yeah, please, listeners, you've got to take this seriously. If you've got to keep it, you need to jump on the Patreon or the Redbubble, but or the Ko-fi. I've got a.
Well, maybe we just need to do a campaign. We want it.
Come on, listeners, get
WWI.
Get behind him.
WWI.
Get behind him. I know, to be honest, he has been a bit of a. I can't but not say it. Could be listening. He has been a little bit troublesome of late. I think.
Prima donna.
Well, you know how he's like at the end of the music episodes, where he gets very. He's been like that outside of the music episodes. This is the trouble.
Has there been a lot of riders he wants for his dressing room?
Yeah, he only likes the green M&Ms or something. Oh, it's difficult. Jelly beans, the purple jelly beans.
And they're I know the hours you have to spend sorting them out.
And I get quite clammy when it's hot, so I end up it's melted before I leave it. Oh, it's just not. I'm just not.
I think that's the thing. Maybe you just he needs an entourage.
Yes, I think he does.
You need someone to count the green M&Ms out for.
Well, I guess Uncle John suggested the magpies, but you can't trust a magpie with a packet of M&Ms.
No, not generally, especially the shiny ones.
So I don't know. I mean, there's been talk of agents. I don't think he had an agent. I mean, half my cast don't.
What, secret agents?
Maybe, but half my cast don't have a contract. I don't know where this contract. I don't even remember signing this contract. I think I've done it in my sleep. But
well, you know, it's strange alien ways. You know, they won't basically open an envelope without signing a contract.
But Bettina, being a famous person, she's got into his head agents and stuff, and I mean not secret ones, but just agents. So I mean,
it's you know, some of us some of us are in the gutter. All of us are in the gutter. Some of us are looking at the stars, and when you've come from the stars,
I mean, I know what you mean, but the trouble is, there's a problem. If it gets an agent, I have. Nobody's listening, are they? Probably not. But if we get him an agent, I have to find somebody to play the agent, and there's only so many voices that Toppy can do, because you know he's very versatile, but he has to use some of them for the spellcast. I can't keep saying to him, "Oh, Toppy, can you do another character voice?" And some of us only have a few voices inside us. But anyway.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, I mean, he gets paid per voice. You know, so it's a good deal for everybody, really.
Payment in I'm not sure he gets payment in money though.
But that's why he gets the big bucks. You see, that's the creativity. You know, it's that you have to think of a new voice.
Well, look, I can hear the theme music coming, so you just have a word with him. See if you can get him to sing something.
I'll sit him in a corner and pat his head or one of them, and we'll see where it goes.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm not the.
No, he likes you. He likes you.
Well, I never know why.
Because you're not me for a start. I mean.
That at least is true. That is at least true. At least that is one thing we can categorically say. When it comes to characters, I am definitely, absolutely, and totally not somebody else.
No, I don't think so. Anyway, right. Let you get talking to him.
Unless
you get talking.
I've got to go now. Bye. Gotta go. Bye.
Goodbye.
It's been good, but yeah, definitely time to come home now.
Wow. Really? No kidding.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
This show is part of the Pride 48 network. Find more shows over at pride48.com.
Oh dear. What's going on now?
Oh, it's the Shy Life podcast.
Let's go.
I have a voice. I have a voice.
You have a voice.
You have a voice. We have a voice.
We have a voice.
Unique voices in podcasting.
UnivazPods.net.
Martin, how nice to see you.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm fine.
I hear things are afoot.
Oh, well, I'm never sure which of them are feet and which of them are tentacles or arms. They're all the same thing. Anyway, I should label them, but...
Yes, I suppose that is a very humanist stance to take, saying something's afoot, really, isn't it?
Yes.
I'll have to think about my word usage.
I'm seriously going to ask me to sing some songs again from 76. I mean, I've done it once before.
I know. Well, I mean, you know, if push comes to shove, you know, you get repeat fees. I mean, you can always ask them to just play in the old ones and pretend they're new.
That's what I said. I can't even remember what happened in that missing. Well, it's not missing. The unedited episode 2. I can't even remember what he asked me to do then, but not he.
But that's because you've been using your ick mind tricks, and everybody's memory's been wiped so many times now that none of us can remember anything.
Martin, just don't let everybody know. Oh, for goodness sake, I'll rattle through a few for you.
Yeah, but you know, if you are negotiating, it's always a useful thing to have in your back pocket. Do you have pockets?
I do, yes.
Well, that's all right. Well, keep some negotiations in your back pocket. I think you'll come through this all right. I think you'll come out of this quite well.
I think I need to speak to an agent, but anyway, look, I'll do it this one.
No.
I'm not going to give you many. I'll just give you a few. Look, just let the room be hushed for a moment.
Paper song. That's what you need to get going. Paper song.
Save your kisses for me. Save all your kisses for me. Bye-bye, baby. Goodbye. That's enough of that one. Don't go breaking my heart. La, 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 la. That's enough of that one. Dancing Queen. La, 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 Dancing Queen. That's enough of that one. Fernando. Hear the drum, Fernando. Dum, 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 dum. Under the moon of love. I can't remember that one. Sailing. We are sailing. We are... Oh, that's too high.
It's like, I tell you, it's like the stars on 45. It's astonishing. We'll have to do some segueing.
I've got a brand new combine harvester, and I'll give you the key. You make me feel like dancing. I'm gonna dance the night away. Mamma mia, mamma, I can't remember. It's very famous, but I've forgotten it. Let them in. Bohemian Rhapsody, I can't do that one. That's quite enough. You've had enough. That's too much. I'm done.
That's a lot of songs. That's a lot of songs.
I'm out of breath.
Ka-ching. How many M&Ms is that?
It must be at least 17.
Precisely.
I'm going now. That's enough. I hope that's fine. It's been good to see you as usual, Martin.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to see you. All of you.
Thank you. I'm going to go now.
Okay.
I'm wearing trousers, you know. Okay, I'm off. The pockets, there's the pockets. I'm going. Testicles, not testicles.
Is that your slogan? That should be on a hat.
I think it is. Red button, all the way.
Oh my God, there's nothing I like better is when another new episode of the Shy Life Podcast comes out.
Oh yeah, that's perfectly normal. On the Shy Life Podcast, perfectly normal.
You know, I haven't been on Paul the Shy Yeti's little podcast for a long time. 654. Just the weirdest thing I've ever heard.